Good evening, Astragon Lice. Just before we start tonight's show, I'd just like to see if there's the viewers where you're watching from. And if you could just comment in the comments box that there's obviously viewers out there. We've had fantastic guests on so far, and we've got a fantastic lineup this evening. I know that there's obviously people back in the rugby club drinking outside, and yesterday we had some news that our bar steward, Mr. John Owen, is retiring. So on behalf of everyone at Astragon Rugby Club, I'd like to thank John for his long service. John's quite a well-known hooker back in the West Wales days. Apparently he'll kick anything that's above a daisy on the floor. So it's good to see John, and we'll obviously give John a big farewell. Tonight's show is sponsored by Astragon Lice Community Centre. So when we do the quiz at the end, the prize will be a fantastic party for children up at the Astragon Lice. So the first guest this evening is a gentleman, Nigel Davies. Nigel actually used to watch Astragon Lice a lot with Anthony Buchanan and Gareth Jenkins. We're very lucky to have Nigel on this evening as 498 games for Llanelli, which is absolutely superb. 29 caps for Wales, obviously been around the rugby circuit in terms of coaching and very highly regarded. So just like to say welcome, Nigel, and how are you?
Thank you, Gareth. It's a pleasure to be with you all this evening. And I'm coming to you from sunny Saundersfoot this evening. So looking forward to the chat, Gareth.
Great. So you're down in Saundersfoot. Obviously, thank you for giving up your time on a bit of a break that you're on. How has this lockdown been for you in terms of the last? That's why we've been doing this lockdown. How's your lockdown been, Nigel?
Yeah, it's been all right. You know, as I'm self-employed, I haven't earned any money over the last 4 months. But in terms of just having quality time, it's been great. And you know, we live in a nice part of the world. We live in Monmouthshire. We're a little bit, off the beaten track, and it'd be nice to get back to work.
Great. So in terms of your rugby career, obviously I know it was down in West Wales. Can you just let everybody watching know how you started in rugby as a youngster, and what your journey was like in terms of your probably village rugby through to ending up at Stradey Park, I presume?
Yeah, I think, like quite a lot of the listeners today, I was brought up in a small Welsh community. It was a mining village, Trimsaran.
Yeah.
In all honesty, there wasn't very much there to do apart from play rugby, and most of the young boys took to rugby, and it was a big part of the village. It was the hub, if you like, of the community. And if you didn't play rugby, you didn't do very much. And it was a fantastic childhood for me. I brought up in the school as well. It was a very strong school. A guy called Davies was the coach there, who played for Llanelli as well. And then from the school went into the age grade with Trimsaran. Apart from 1 year at under 13s, we didn't have an under 13s team. So I actually went across the hill to Buryport. I played 1 season with Buryport, and there's still a few people in Barron who still don't speak to me because of that, as you can well imagine. But I then, as I got older, played for the youth. That was a real sort of coming of age experience for all of us, and I think youth rugby has still got a huge part to play in the development of the game in Wales, and something that we maybe undervalue a little bit in the modern sort of game. But anyway, it was a big part of my own sort of development. I had an opportunity while I was still playing youth to go and play for Llanelli Youth. In those days, Llanelli and the Scarlets had their own youth team. But again, it was something I didn't want to do because I'd grown up with all my friends. I wanted to play with them, and actually, I look forward more than anything to playing against Llanelli in those big sort of local fixtures. So that was where I was brought up. That's where I learned all about rugby. It's where I pretty much learned all about life as well in that period, particularly in youth rugby, where you go on little tours, you go on weekends away. It was a fabulous time, and I took a lot out of that. It wasn't just the rugby experience, but it was the growing up experience as well, and that really then gave me the springboard to sort of go forward.
Okay, so I know in terms of what you're up to now, I've been watching your journey with the Welsh Rugby Union. Obviously, can you just explain that? I know you're trying to get involved with the great experience you've got of all sorts of levels of rugby, but what you're doing now in terms of rugby, and what was the last week with the Welsh Rugby Union and getting involved there, and where will that go in the future?
Yeah, I mean, where do you start with that? It's I really think, you know, we're at a bit of a crossroads in the game of rugby in general, and particularly in Welsh rugby. And we need, you know, real strong leadership, and we need people who understand the game, understand how the game works at all levels, because, you know, unless you understand how it all works and interlinks together, from the community game to the semi-professional game to the professional game, you can't really make a judgment on how it should work and how the individual bits work and actually impinge on each other. So you need people who understand that, understand the values of the game, in order really to make some key decisions. And you know, there are lots of issues in the game at the moment that we just got to face up to and deal with and come out the other side of. And I think unless we get some good rugby people involved at that decision-making level, then you know, we won't be in a strong position as we could be to make some of these key decisions, because it is a very crucial time. You know, particularly coming off the back of the COVID pandemic, which again is going to ask some serious questions of community game in particular. If I say the community game, I mean the professional game as well. You know, I think there's some serious questions around that as well. So I think we need good people in the union who understand rugby, who understand the culture of the game in Wales, who understand what rugby in Wales is all about, in order to drive the agenda and actually identify what the issues are and actually problem solve and deal with those issues. Right. And that's really what I put myself forward. I think it's a crucial time for the game. The game has given me so much. You know, the role that I've gone for recently is an honorary role, but you know, I'm more than prepared, and I want to you know, give of my time and my experience and knowledge to try and make a difference, really. And you know, I think we've got to change, and we've got to change things quickly, and we've got to change things on the basis that we're doing it from a position of knowledge, experience, and in some cases data and information, and dealing with all that.
Oh, fantastic. Back to your obviously playing days down in Stradey Park. You know, we've got a lot of Clecky viewers watching. You played, is it 498 games? Is that correct in the red of Clecky?
Yeah, played something like 498 games. Everybody keeps on telling me that, and you know, why I didn't play the last 2 games. But you know, it's a fair amount of games. I think to give sort of people some sort of context of my playing career. My first season, I played with Ray Gravel in the centre, which was a fabulous experience for somebody like me. I'd always looked up to him. I'd gone to Stradey Park to watch Ray play as a young boy, and he was one of my heroes. And to actually have a season playing with him was fantastic. And that was my first season. And the last game of my last season, it sort of crept into the 2000s. I actually played with Gavin Henson. Now, I don't know if many people know this, but Gavin Henson played his first game of senior rugby for Llanelli and the Scarlets. And that was up in the Borders, when the Borders had a team. And that was my last game. So that gives maybe people some sort of context about the time span and then the players that I played with over that period.
That's a fantastic quiz question, that is. I didn't know that. So in terms of the Scarlets, then, you know, you've had some fantastic occasions on Clecky. So what would you say was a standout game for you in that red jersey?
Yeah, I mean, we were probably, as a team, the team that I was involved, we were probably at our peak from about 92 to 94. That was the peak of the team that I played with. And in 93, I think it was 93-94 season, was when we took all before us, really. I think we got on unbeaten. We won the cup, we won the league, and importantly, we beat the world champions at the time, Australia, down in Stradey Park, and it was pretty much their full-on team. You know, they had a couple of injuries, notably a 10 possibly, but everybody else was pretty much the first string team from the World Cup. And you know, we were just, and every team has it, whether you're a junior team, whether you're an age grade team or a community side, you get those years where everything seems to fit into place. Everybody comes together, you know, players mature, everything works, and those couple of years really were the most enjoyable and probably the best brand of rugby that we played at the Scarlets for many years.
Ah, great, fantastic. So then I've obviously you moved on to represent Wales, which is fantastic. So what was your first cap? Who did you play against for obviously when you started out with your first Welsh cap?
Oh, New Zealand. Yeah, I'm not going to mess around. Just straight into it. New Zealand away. And they just came off the back of winning a World Cup as well. So they were, a fantastic team. And you had people like Chris Kerwin, Sean Fitzpatrick, Joe Stanley. They were really a fabulous side. And it was 1988. I was called out to the Welsh tour. It was a bit of a disaster of a Welsh tour. When I was called out there, I remember arriving the day of the first test where Wales lost by about 50 odd points. A little bit jet lag with Mark Jones, if anybody remembers him, the number 8.
Yeah, we know Mark well.
So we both arrived together. Yeah. And a couple of weeks later, we both got our first caps against New Zealand. And for me, it was really memorable, obviously, to get your first cap, something that you dreamed about from a very young age, playing rugby like all of us do. And to actually achieve that was great in itself. But then to be out there on the park against this awesome New Zealand team and face the haka, it was just, something particularly special that will live with me for the rest of my life. From a playing point of view, it was really interesting because, again, one of my childhood heroes was Joe Stanley. Right. And I had the opportunity to play against him. And it was great. The first 20 minutes, I was enjoying the game. It was quite tight. And we had an injury. And I ended up going from the centre to the wing. Now, the only time I'd ever played on the wing was in that one game, my first international game against New Zealand. I hadn't played before, and I certainly didn't play since. And but it was fine, I was playing for Wales. I'd do whatever they wanted me to. But so I thought, right, this is going to be a bit of a test. I said, but what I'll make sure doesn't happen is he's not going to run through me. So within about 10 minutes, they got the ball out to John, and he was charging down his wing at me. I thought, right, I'm going to plant myself here, and I'm going to make sure I'm going to stick in on this tackle. So I really, my body language was solid. I was strong. And all of a sudden, he runs right up to me, and then he just puts a little chip kick over the top of me, catches it and scores in the corner. I was sort of nailed to the floor at that time. But it was interesting. It was a brilliant experience. But I think maybe going back to how things were organised and managed in those days, nobody had told me that I could potentially go on to the wing. And this is the only time I've ever played wing, which was my first cap against New Zealand away. Not
great.
Ideal.
So you moved on, obviously, with the coaching then. So what was that? You went, was it on to Llanelli, then Scarlets, and then Gloucester? Or can you just let our viewers know? I know you coach Wales as well. We shouldn't forget that. And you're involved. How did your coaching journey pan out then, Nigel? I think
a lot of senior players, as they become more senior in the playing side, they take on that sort of coaching mantle sort of naturally anyway. In that last year that I played for Llanelli, which was 99-2000, I was actually a player coach. So it was a sort of a gradual transition for me. It was a great opportunity that Gareth Jenkins allowed me to have. And after that one season as a player coach, I quickly, realised I couldn't do both. And then I went into coaching, and again, Gareth allowed me that opportunity. And we had some great players coming through at that time. A lot of young backs that I was fortunate enough to work with. Mike Phillips, Dwayne Peel, Stephen Jones, the list goes on. So it was a great opportunity to work with that side. And it was brilliant, I learned so much off Gareth. Bucks, obviously, he was involved as a team manager. But Bucks, I think Bucks filled the role of team manager particularly well because he understood the game. He understood people, more importantly. And he could act as a little bit of a buffer between coaches and players as well, and did a fantastic job. And, I think that group, from a rugby management point of view and coaching point of view, we had some really great times, and myself, Gareth, Anthony Buchanan, the late great Stuart Gallagher. It was a great time for us all. You know, we were learning the transition from amateur to professional game, but it was a great time, great experiences.
Yeah, and I remember, in fairness, you know, yourself and Gareth coming to watch Astragon Ice when Bucks did it in 2008. Actually, a very successful season. You were quite regular viewer, watching us quite regular. So I think we all played that a little bit better that season.
Big supporter, and he made sure that we came along. Yeah. But of course, you know, Astragon have got a rich history as well, particularly in the cup, the Welsh Cup. And I can remember, you know, I think back in the early 80s and into the mid 80s, where, you know, they gave a lot of the top teams noses, and I think there was a draw once between them and Llanelli as well, wasn't there?
Yeah, there was a draw,
and Llanelli went through on tries.
Yeah, and that's correct. And they obviously beat Newport in Astragon Ice and played Neath, the first all-seater stadium, actually. And they played Neath. So, yeah, very rich history of people that have come. And a lot of these guys watching. Obviously, Vernon Cooper, you'd know well. Vernon has coached the club, and, you know, so you probably have operated with Vernon. I've actually got a question that's come in on my mobile phone. Question for Nigel Davies. This is a prop, Jonathan Williams, who plays for Astelvera. I'm just going to read it. With the announcement of the Ospreys signing Stephen Myler, obviously yesterday, do you think, you know, that this is a bit of a blow for academies in you know, for young players in Wales and the academies? Is the question. Is there an outside half in Wales that could do the job, and is there a development issue? Is the question. So, would you care to answer that?
Yeah, and I think this is one of the issues that we face in Wales. You know, and I think if you look west, where they've got 3 or 4 very competent 10s and young 10s coming through the system, if our system worked really well, then why couldn't we just slot one of those across, you know, rather than get them sort of you know, warming the bench or not even getting involved at all on match days where there's an opportunity. It hasn't got to be a long-term thing. It could just be a season-long loan, but it would, you know, it would solve 2 problems. It would give development to a young Welsh qualified player, and it would also solve the problem that you know, the Ospreys are finding themselves in. Why we have to bring in a 36-year-old non-Welsh qualified player, and how that can be allowed to happen, you know, I think it's disgraceful, and I think it's one of the problems that we face. And I think one of the other issues, if you look at the coaching setups of the regions, you know, not only have we not got Welsh coaches, we seem to be losing our Welsh coaches rather than developing them. And again, you know, that's not the type of message that we should be giving. I think that's scandalous that we just are not developing and bringing through our Welsh coaches. I hear a lot of, you know, rhetoric about it happening, but the reality is, you know, there are no Welsh coaches, you know, heading up the regions, and there's very few Welsh coaches now supporting those functions. So, you know, for me, it's not good enough.
Yeah, and that's a great, you know, that's a really good, honest. I think Jonathan has just, you know, said that, you know, he probably agrees that. Thanks for asking that. And there's another couple of people who said so. In terms of, you know, Gloucester, you went out to coach up in England. You know, was that a big benefit for you to change? Obviously, getting out of Wales, and a good experience for you there, because I know that league is very intense, isn't it? Week in, week out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure intensity is the issue, because I think it's even more intense in a place like Gloucester. I mean, you know, if anybody's gone across there to watch a game, you know, 13,000 people every match in a really fantastic stadium. It's as intense as it gets, and you know, as Welsh people, we're hugely passionate about the game of rugby. But you know, so the people in Gloucester, you know, they are massively passionate about the game, and you know, there's a lot of pressure in those areas, and to succeed and do well. So the pressure is a little bit more, if anything. But it was great, you know, to take myself out of probably a little bit of a comfort zone that I had at the Scarlets, because you know, I'd grown up there. I knew a lot of people there. I had a lot of goodwill there, and then just putting yourself somewhere different where you had to stand on your own 2 feet was great. And you know, I learned a lot in that period. And you know, our first season was very successful. We were the most successful or most improved team in the league. We went from 10th to 5th. We just missed out on a 4th spot. And it was great. And even in the second year, I thoroughly enjoyed my time there. The problem that we had was, although we performed reasonably well, our goal kicking percentages were not good enough. And, I think we ended up the season with a 56% goal kicking success rate. Well, on average, in professional rugby, it's 77%. And if we had been at 77, the stats tell us we'd have again finished in the top 5. So, those are the margins really that you win or lose at the top level. But I think the other big thing that I found going into England is just the resources. I'd come away from the Scarlets, and I think our main sponsor was about £50,000. Going into a place like Gloucester, where they just picked up a main sponsorship deal for 1.5 million for 3 years. So, it's completely different setup, completely different financial model. You've got 13,000 paying customers who are paying something like £35 to £50 a ticket. Whereas again, in regional rugby, there's a lot of tickets that are given away. There's some great season ticket deals, which is brilliant, and I think that's good for the supporters. But I know from looking at the figures in both the English Premiership and the Welsh regional game that the difference is vast, and the income stream from crowds is minimal really in Welsh regional rugby, whereas in the English Premiership in the main, it's considerable. It makes a difference. It allows you to buy players. It allows you to actually pay your debts. It makes a difference. So I learned a lot there. And that's one of the concerns we've got really moving forward is we've got 4 regions at the moment. Is that sustainable?
Do you think it's sustainable going forward, Nigel? Then, or do you think we need to look at resources and what do you think on that one? Because that's interesting.
Well, it comes back to my original point, really. Unless you can see the game in its totality, right across the board, and how it all works and interlinks, and it does interlink. And I get angry sometimes when people say they're ring fencing the community game. Well, okay, maybe you can talk about that in a financial sense, but you can't ring fence the community game from the professional game, because that's where all our players come from. Unless we want to bring in all New Zealand players as well and foreign players, as we're doing with our coaches, which I don't think for 1 minute anybody in the union of clubs wants. We want Welsh people who have come through the system, that we know that we can relate to, play in and coach in Wales. I think that's, and yes, I agree that it might take some time to do that, but let's at least see a plan. Let's actually get some sort of structure that we can all be confident that that's going to happen. And in terms of the sustainability model of the 4 Welsh regions, well, in terms of business models, you'd have to say no, they don't work. It's as simple as that when you just look at their accounts. It's a particularly difficult period, and we're talking about having a big loan of money. So again, there's going to be more pressure on those 4 regions. But again, it's about having really a clear discussion about what the model needs to look like moving forward to make sure that we have got a sustainable game.
Okay, and then in terms, I know you've operated in the Premiership, and the Scarlets and Llanelli Awards. What do you think of the role of the Premiership then within Welsh rugby? Has that got a crucial role for developing players?
Absolutely, and again, I've done a lot of work on the Premiership, and I had a huge value for it when I was at the Scarlets, and I've experienced things like play against Pontypridd, and he played against Lockyer at Pontypridd. I'm not an excellent centre. It really ran rings around him that day. But off the back of that experience, I remember sitting down with Scott and his coaches and talking about how he could improve his game. Within 3 months of that game, where he got sort of run rings around by Lockyer, within 3 months of that game, he was scoring the winning try for Wales against England. Without that platform for him to learn and develop, for coaches to work with, he wouldn't have seen that. So the Premiership has played a huge part in the development of players. On average, Welsh internationals play 30 games in the Premiership before they go on and either play regional or international rugby. And those are stats. That is data that exists, which I put forward in front of the Welsh Rugby Union. So the Premiership plays a massive part. Not only that, I think in a time and a period where there's a lot of uncertainty, where club rugby and community rugby, there's uncertainty. I think it's a good thing to have these big names, if you like, where we can all relate to, and it gives a bit of stability to the game in Wales as well, and it gives people things to aim for and a clear pathway. And I've seen so many players come through. Well, all the players have come through that system, unless they haven't played in Wales and they just come in and qualified on residential grounds. So it's played a massive part in the development of both professional and international rugby players, and it's been undervalued in my view.
Okay, and then what's the future before we obviously move on? What's the future for you then in terms of where are you going to go next in terms of rugby and obviously work-wise for Nigel Davies?
Well, in terms of rugby, as you probably know, I've tried to get on to the Welsh Rugby Union as a national representative. I'm not giving up on that. I'm probably more determined than ever because of all the stuff that I've mentioned to you today. Really, I think that there's some real key issues that we have to address. Otherwise, in 5 or 10 years' time, our game will look completely different to what it looks like now. And I think now is the chance. Now is a time where we've got to actually make some really important rugby decisions for the good of the whole of the game in Wales, not just for parts of the game in Wales. So I think there's a big job of work to do there. I think we need to get people on there who understand the game, and I want to try and help. I want to try and serve the clubs and the community of clubs, because this will affect everybody. And only when you've got a clear understanding of how it all works and the issues, and also how to resolve some of those issues, because that's key to it. It's all very well identifying an issue, and that's pretty straightforward in many ways. But then it's how you actually resolve that. I was lucky, Gareth. I count myself lucky in terms of I played rugby largely as an amateur. I caught the last couple of years, I think, of the professional game. So I had a career outside of the game. I'm a graduate engineer. I worked in the automotive industry. I ended up there as a head of quality for a large site. And then I went into management consultancy, and it's what I've done previously, and what I do to a certain extent now is I work in organisations and look at how to restructure them to make sure that they're effective and efficient in attaining their objectives. And it's, some people call it change management, but that's what I do in essence. So I think having that sort of background coupled with my rugby experience and knowledge put me in a good position to try and help. And that's what I want to do. So, that's my focus. Whether I'll get an opportunity to do that, I don't know, but I'm going to try.
Okay. I just want to check, have you got anywhere to go? Because I'm just waiting on our next guest, and I don't want to, obviously I promised you it'd only be 20. Have you got a bit more time to carry on, or have you got dinner or something you've got to dash off to?
Yeah. Hang around, guys.
Yeah, I'll tell you what it is our next guest, Sean Fitzpatrick, this morning has confirmed this week. So hopefully he'll be. Mr. Joe Marler, obviously, as we know, is a character. And or Adam Jones is currently ringing him to say, where are you? So, it's going to be one of them. It won't be as bad as last week, in fairness, to Dale McIntosh, who did it all himself, because we have got other guests coming on. But this is the beauty of live TV. But I think people are enjoying it so much looking at the comments that they've asked for a little bit longer if you've got longer. But I don't want to abuse the fact that obviously I have. But so in terms of players wise, was there any when you've coached, who would be the standout? We hear things like Gavin Ensign, he just gloats. I mean, who would be like a standout player that you coached in terms of through your coaching career? Really, someone who was totally a different level of class, really. Yeah,
I mean, it varies enormously, really, in terms of you've got some players who are very professional, who are very solid, who you can rely on week in, week out. level of performance, and they're also going to be good people in the environment. So, when you talk about players like that, you've got to talk about people like Stephen Jones, who's now obviously coaching Wales. Always had that ability to coach at a high level. And a lot of the best players, as I said to you earlier, as they get older, they tend to sort of fall into those roles anyway, because if they don't take responsibility for what they're doing, they're not going to be the best player they can be. And I think some of the better coaches, the way they approach developing or coaching their players is by actually getting the players to think for themselves and make decisions. I think some modern coaches tend to paint by numbers a little bit and look at the stats and say, this is our pattern, this is what you've got to play to. If you don't play to this, then, you're going to get pulled up. Whereas actually, you need to play with your head up a little bit sometimes and give the players the freedom to do that. I think for me, I remember, obviously, some of you will know my son, Sam. Sam was playing in a pre-season game a couple of years ago. And it was in the Liberty, and the Ospreys were attacking from left to right, and they were sort of folding around the corner. And all of a sudden, Sam sort of spotted a gap, and he flashed back to the left. And as it happened, it was the right decision, and he scored a try. And he was telling me in the week then he got a bit of a bollocking from the coaches because he didn't stick to their system, because he moved outside of their system. And that's quite an extreme sort of example of it. But, you do get a lot of coaches these days who do paint by numbers a little bit, where, as for me, it's about developing the player rather than being too paranoid about the structure that you're working to. So, again, when you're looking for players that do that, Stephen Jones was brilliant. He understood the game, he'd read the game, and he'd make good decisions on the field. So from a coaching point of view, those are players that are just solid gold. They're absolutely the type of players that you've got to have in your environment. And then you get players who are just super X factor. And Shane Williams, I mean, what a fabulous player. And to prove my point, I suppose, when I coached Wales, there was a period in the Christmas when we were coaching where all the regions played each other. So we did a little exercise where we looked at all the key stats for individual players in their positions, and we'd look at what the team would look like if we selected a Welsh team purely on the players that had the best stats. So we did this, and actually it wasn't a million miles away from the team that we would have selected, apart from someone like Shane, who, he's nowhere near the high level of stats that other players get, yet he's got that X factor that, every time he gets the ball, he'll beat the player, or, those type of players, stats go out the window, absolutely. So Shane was just a fabulous player, great to have in your team, and that's all you wanted to do is get the ball in his hands.
Yeah. And that's what's come back, actually. Someone before you mentioned Shane, I think one of our new viewers, Daniel Era, I don't know you, Daniel, but said, how come Wales can only produce, one Shane Williams in 20 years? But is he that unique that, they don't just come around, was Shane's talent natural? And obviously, it's not manufactured.
Well, yeah, I think we've got lots of players like Shane. If you look at the Dragons, they've got a couple of really exciting wings now. You look at people like Matthew Morgan, real amazing X Factor players. But I think Wales in particular over the last, with Warren Gatland have been hugely successful, massively successful, and a lot of it has been built on consistency, not making mistakes, not making errors, being able to reproduce performances, knowing exactly what you're going to get from the team week in, week out. And there's a lot to be said for that. I've certainly learned watching how Warren Gatland has coached this Welsh team, because my philosophy, being a Scarlet, has been pretty sort of gung-ho in terms of playing the game and playing attractive style of rugby, but I've become a lot more conservative over the years, because at the end of the day, particularly at the top level, it is about winning and losing, and cutting down your errors and making sure that you don't make errors, and having players who can actually do that is a big part of being successful in the professional game. And that's where maybe you don't see as many Shane Williams types of players who tend to be a little bit more high risk.
Good. So obviously, in terms of when you were playing, there's people are commenting about the great late, Cadwyn James and Ray Gravel. In terms of from coaches that coached you, who would be a coach which really stands out as making a difference on your career? How did they operate in terms of, because there's quite a lot of coaches listening as well. Who would be the coach which stands out, for you really?
Yeah, I mean, it started in Trimsara School with Nigel Davies. He was passionate about his rugby. I probably did more rugby training than classwork in primary. It was a great sort of way to be brought up, and then to be coached by someone like Garth Jenkins, Alan Lewis as well, who was my backs coach. He was a great coach, a great mentor of mine, and again, both him and Gareth were people that had a real passion for the game, and that sort of rubbed off on you. But they were different, because a lot of the coaches that I'd had up until that time had been a little bit mechanical and a bit like drill sergeants screaming at you, and whereas Alan and Gareth would actually sit you down and talk to you and want to know a little bit about you and what made you tick and how you felt you could actually add value to the team, and what were your strengths and what was your idea about how the game should be played. And because of that, you tend to give a little bit more of yourself, and you feel a little bit more engaged, and consequently you tend to play a lot better. So
yeah.
Are
you there?
Those yeah.
Are you back with us, Nigel? I think you're still there. The Saundersfoot Wi-Fi is a bit slow, is it? Or are you there?
Yeah.
Great.
Be back?
Yeah, great to have you back. Yeah, I've got about 5 minutes left with you. Sean Fitzpatrick this week has confirmed. I can read out to the viewers. I will be there in 5 minutes. I'm just putting my chicken on the barbecue. So we may not have Joe Marler this week, but that's that will be sorted out with Adam Jones. But we will be getting obviously Sean Fitzpatrick. So we're delighted that will happen, and bar any technical issues. But I've got it in writing now, so the viewers this week, when I'm doing my shopping, Astro Gun Lights, I don't expect to be abused for not being able to get these people on, but it's out of my control. So another question, I don't know, Neil Haberfield, he said, do you think there's too much emphasis on defence and it's had a huge adverse effect on attacking rugby, Nigel?
Yes, I do. I think it goes back to my earlier point. It's very much about percentages now, and Wales built their game on defence, and again, it comes to a philosophy and focus for a team, and Wales's focus was very much defence. And I wouldn't necessarily argue against that, because when we coached Wales, it was our philosophy was to attack and to score tries. And I don't know if people remember; they certainly remember the game, but the World Cup game when we lost to Fiji.
Yeah, we remember it.
Which was basically a quarter-final game. Yeah, well, I remember it well as well. So I won't
mention that one. I will move on.
Yeah. No. We lost that game, but we actually outscored Fiji 5-4. So it's all very well scoring 5 goal tries, but if you allow them to score 4 tries and don't kick your kicks and they kick their kicks, you're going to lose. You're going to lose games of rugby. And I think Wales and when Warren came in, he was very pragmatic, and how can we get this side to win? And the way you do it is shore up that defence and make it a big part of the team and the culture of the team. And that's what it was. And Wales did fabulously well with defence underpinning attack. And what tends to happen is that the side will spend a lot more time on their defensive skills than they do on their attacking skills. And that becomes a bigger focus. And, you know, you play in certain areas of the field because you can back your defence. So, and statistically, these days, when you look at how games are won and lost, tries are mainly scored from turnovers from a defensive point of view. So you go from defence to attack because you turn them over, or from poor kicks. And that's where the majority of tries are scored these days. So there's an argument to say that, you know, when you're looking at your attack, you should be looking to see, you know, how you're going to transition from turnovers or from kick returns.
Right. Now that's very interesting. Yeah. So you mentioned, obviously, you know, you were big Scarlets. The Welsh, if I can talk about the Welsh setup now, it's going to take a bit of time for them to bed in. But, you know, obviously, you know, there's a lot of Scarlets, you know, Byron Hayward, you know, Stephen Jones, obviously the head coach, Wayne Pivot. What do you think in terms of the current Wales side? You know, there's obviously going to be stepping stones to move forward. You know, what do you think is looking like? A lot of people are very impatient as well, aren't they, with where do you think the Welsh squad is going to go, you know, in terms of at the moment, where in the future?
It's you know, it's a tough gig for those guys picking up from Warren Gatland, who's been so successful for such a long period of time. So it's always going to be a tough one, and they've got to try and stamp their own game on it. And look, at international rugby, you get very little time to develop your philosophies. You know, Warren Gatland had sort of 10 years to do it. These guys have only been in there, you know, a couple of weeks, a couple of months. So it's going to take time for them to stamp their authority on the team. I think as well, this Welsh team is going through a little bit of a transition in terms of players. You know, we're going to see Alan Wynne come to the end of his career in the next couple of years, international career, and a few other key players. So again, that's a difficult period. So, you know, I don't envy them. It's going to be tough for them. But you know, I do think there's a lot of good players in Wales now. There's a lot of international level players in Wales, and you know, they've got every chance to turn this around. They won't do it the same way that Warren did it, and you know, I respect them for that. They'll want to play a more expansive game of rugby, and I completely respect them for that as well. You know, shouldn't underestimate the influence that Sean Edwards has had on that team and that environment for the last 10 years. He has been the main driving force within that group. And consequently, you know, when you talk about Wales in the last 10 years, you talk about their defensive prowess and their physicality. You know, I've never seen such a big team. I met up with the Welsh team. It was about 4 or 5 years ago. I'd never seen such a big international team or such a powerful team as the Welsh team. And, you know, that's saying something because, you know, we're normally quite small compared to other sides. But, you know, Wales has been a very dominant physical force in the world rugby over the last 10 years. I think, you know, they want to hold on to that. But this new group of coaches are going to want to move away as well and create their own sort of legacy and way of playing. But it's not going to be easy because, you know, the game generally is based on defence, and also, you know, they've got to convince a group of players who have been used to a certain way of playing for a long time. Plus, there's a lot of changes in key personnel on the playing front, so it's a big challenge that they've got. But I know there's some good people in there as well.
Okay, great. Well, we've had a question on the back of the Alan Wynne Jones. You know, we all know what he means to, you know, the Welsh team. Julian Biden, who's followed this show pretty much. It's been going for 22 weeks. I said to you earlier, we've had over 200,000 viewers, which for a grassroots club is phenomenal, in my opinion. Julian's asking, do you believe we've got a player that could step up into Alan Wynne's, you know, into that kind of prowess when he hangs up his boots?
Well, I don't think there's anybody quite like Alan Wynne. I think, you know, Alan Wynne was a 40-year-old when he was 20 in terms of his maturity. And I remember he played his first couple of caps under Gareth Jenkins when I was coaching with Gareth. And he came to Argentina and he was a young man. But we actually made him captain there because he had all the qualities that you would want from a captain. The other thing about Alan Wynne, which is phenomenal, and I know I spoke about stats earlier, you know, stats are important if you can take them into context. But when we looked at Alan Wynne, when he was playing at that time, his stats were double any other player in world rugby in his position. So, he'd hit more rucks, he'd tackle more times, he'd be involved in more mauls, he'd carry the ball, pass the ball. His stats would double any other position in world rugby. So he was absolutely unique. And, if you watch Alan Wynne play now, even now, he's almost always in shot. He's doing something, he's effective. He's actually, because he understands the game, he's bright, he's fit, he's strong, he can get in there and he can make a difference. So he is quite a unique individual, He's probably one of the best second rows ever to have played the game anywhere. So, do we have players of his caliber? I think I'd be doing him an injustice if I said yes. I think we've got some good players and they're going to have to step up to the mark when that void is left. But make no mistake, that's going to be a big void, not only for his maturity and captaincy and the fact that, people actually want to play for him and will put their bodies on the line for him, but the amount of work that he gets through, and he's so effective in games, he's always in shot. So, I will not do him the injustice of saying that we've got somebody who step up, because he's been quite a unique player for Wales.
Okay, well, that's fantastic. I'd just like to say personally, Nigel, before we go, there's good news for me. We've got our green room at the back, and Sean Fitzpatrick is waiting there, giving me the thumbs up. So I'd like all our viewers to obviously share the interviews through social media at the moment, so we can really give the club the awareness they deserve. Because there's a lot of people working very hard at the moment in Astragon Lice, as there are in all clubs. But I'd just like to also personally say the fact that you've given up over almost an hour of your time on holiday just shows what an absolute fantastic rugby man and person you are. And even the club president, Glyn Rees, has said, come up on the box there, Nigel would make a huge difference. And I sincerely hope that he's voted him for some job on the WRU, because his talk sense and his knowledge has been fantastic the last 45 minutes. So I'd like to personally thank you, Nigel, for joining us, and say it's been really interesting. You've been very honest as well, which is what's been fantastic about the Welsh Rugby Union, about the regions and different things. And that honesty is something that I really do appreciate. But I genuinely appreciate you giving up your extra time as well on your holiday, Nigel. So thank you very much.
It's a pleasure. It was a pleasure to speak to you all. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to let you go and enjoy the rest of Saunders Foot. And get down on that beach down there. And I'm going to bring in Mr. Sean Fitzpatrick. So thank you very much, Nigel.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've obviously got our next guest this evening. The gentleman who is, in my opinion, probably the best I've like to just bring in Mr. Sean Fitzpatrick. Are you there, Sean?
Okay, good. Yeah, I can. I couldn't hear you for a minute there, Gareth, but we're all good now.
Lovely. Well, you're live, Sean. So just to say, I'd just like to introduce you to our guests.
We're just looking at myself. I should have had a shave. My God.
Don't worry about that. Don't worry. We'll let you off. So I hope the chicken has gone on, ready for your dinner.
On. My chicken's looking after it.
We've got Mr. Sean Fitzpatrick, 92 caps for the All Blacks. One of my favourite players to ever play the game. A lot of people will be watching this for the fact of obviously that you are an absolute legend of the game rugby. So firstly, Sean, thanks for joining us, and I'd like to say we're a little club down in South Wales who have been doing this for the last probably, I think it's 22 weeks. We've had over 200,000 viewers watching.
Wow.
Different people. We're quite shocked to get people like All Blacks. Next week we'll be joined by Zinzan Brooke and Xavier Rush.
Ooh.
So we're really proud of what we've achieved. So I'd just like to say thank you for joining us.
Pleasure,
just say how has the lockdown been for you, Sean, so far? Obviously, it's quite different times for people. So how has it been for you?
Well, firstly, Gareth, thank you for having me, and apologies for last week.
Don't worry.
I don't know what happened there, but it's great to be on your show and South Wales. I love the clubs in Wales, and my memories of Wales go way back to watching rugby in the late 60s and 70s with my dad in the early hours of the morning. And obviously my father was an All Black, and he was involved in the last All Black team that lost to the Welsh in '53. So my association with Wales goes back a long way. Lockdown for us it's been okay. It's just been a really sad time here in London, Gareth, and we're just trying to make the most of it. Really, I'm a really optimistic sort of person, to make the best out of a bad situation, and we've tried to do that. I've spent a lot of time sort of thinking about rugby post-COVID, how that's going to look.
Yeah.
But we've had some, my oldest daughter's 28, and she's been with us, since right in early March, with her boyfriend. So we had some really quality family time that we'll look back on in years to come, I'm sure, and say thank you for giving us that time as a family. Which I'm traditionally traveling 3-4 days a week. And I've actually really enjoyed just being at home, being able just to focus on different things. But yeah, we're okay. A lot of my time is spent with Laureus, which is a sports charity, and we have over 200 projects in 45 countries. So a lot of our time has been spent trying to make sure that the children in those projects are safe. Because a lot of the projects had to close down during lockdown, and a lot of these children were very vulnerable and unsafe. So I'm pleased to say that has worked really, really well during lockdown.
Fantastic. And I think a lot of the guests we've had on have mentioned that their busy lifestyles, they don't see their family as much, and I can echo that. And as people are saying, look how fantastically positive you started out. So you mentioned your father. Obviously, I've done my research into you and your father. And obviously, as an All Black, we won't mention the defeat in '53 again. We may as well. But, in terms of your rugby career, how did it start for you in New Zealand? As probably a youngster, and then how did it evolve through into, being, in my opinion, well, you're in. I've got a cupboard of grogs, right? Different players.
Okay, well, yeah. There's a Welsh. You're in there. Well, there's a Welshman, and I'm just having a look around. Actually, there's a Welshman in Wales who's done a couple of grogs with me.
Yeah, I've got that one. So so that's how highly it's a good seller. So in terms of your career, Sean, how did you start? How did you get into rugby, and then
Wales, Gareth, is probably for me the closest thing to New Zealand in terms of that community-based clubs like your club, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Where the rugby club is the centre of the community. And that's the way it was for us growing up in New Zealand. As I said, in the early 70s, rugby was everything. I was pleading with my mother from about the age of 4 to let me play rugby. And she said, "No, you have to wait until you're 5." And unfortunately, I'm a June baby. So in New Zealand, that was halfway sort of into the season, really. So I'd have to wait for the next season. So I pleaded with her. So I started playing at 4.5 years old. And my brother, whose birthday it is today, actually, there's two of the most special people of my life's birthdays on July 18. One is Nelson Mandela, who is the most phenomenal man I've ever met. And my late brother, Mark, who was 5 years older than me. It's his birthday today. And I used to go down to the club. I was the team mascot. Dad coached my brother's team. So at 4 years old, I was a team mascot. We'd go down to the club. We'd wake up. So Friday night, we'd all be polishing our boots in front of the fire, stuffing them with newspaper to put them in front of the fire to dry them out. And then we'd polish them. Then we'd nail our sprigs in, and Dad would be sitting there reading the paper, having a beer. And no, you don't do it that way, son. You do it that way. Make sure you polish your bloody boots, son. You've got to have nice, clean boots, and all that sort of stuff. And then I'd wake up at 8 o'clock in the morning and I'd listen to the radio to make sure that our game wasn't cancelled or my brother's game wasn't cancelled. And then we'd all pile into the car, all 6 of us would pile into the car, and we'd head down to the rugby club for the day. And that was we'd watch my brother's team play. Mum ran the tuck shop, and Dad coached the team, and then we'd watch the senior team play in the afternoon, and then Mum and Dad and all the other parents would go into the club rooms and be drinking away, and meanwhile the kids are out on the field I was pretending I was Gareth Edwards, or I was Barry John, or I was Brian Williams, and that's what we did for 3 or 4 hours, and then we'd jump back in the car and back to home at 8 o'clock at night. But that was what life was growing up. And did I know that my father was an All Black? Yeah, I knew, but he never put pressure on us. He just says, son, just enjoy yourself. And that's probably why I played for so long, Gareth, was that between sort of 10 and 20, I enjoyed myself. I never thought I'd be an All Black. We were saying in New Zealand with the All Blacks, every man and boy would change places with you tomorrow. And for me, I was overweight. I was a big kid. And so I never played in the best teams. I was always sort of catching up. I was always playing with older boys. And it wasn't really till I was probably 16, 17, 18 that I sort of felt as though I had potential. And even when I got into the New Zealand under-21s at the age of 19, I still thought that I wasn't good enough. I was thinking, how are you here? And I had a real sort of, I was playing prop at that stage, and it wasn't until I went to the University Rugby Club in Auckland that Graham Henry was our club coach.
Yeah.
He said, Fitzy, he said, you're too small for a tight head. We've got a pretty good tight head in John Drake, who was an All Black. He said, you need to play hooker. And it was probably the life-changing experience for me. But once again, it took me a good 3-4 years to be able to throw the ball in. And I can remember Andy Hayden, who I dare say is not in the best of health at the moment, the poor old bugger. And he told me to bugger off. He said, you're not good enough to be a hooker. He said, go and learn how to throw the ball in. So for 3 years, I was in the wilderness, basically. And it wasn't until I was 21 years old that I got an opportunity in an All Black trial. And, the rest is history. But it was a great learning experience.
Fantastic. Now, I really appreciate what you say about, the community game and your mum being the tuck shop, your dad. That's what it is like. But it's interesting how you had those Welsh role models, but I know so many Welsh people have got the other way now. So it's New Zealand role models, yourself, the Dan Carters, isn't it? So it's
I suppose we had a generation, Gareth, of in the early 70s, 71, when the Lions came to New Zealand.
Yeah.
And they beat the All Blacks in a series in New Zealand. And so we had a generation like Grant Fox, my great mate, who he started kicking around the corner because Barry John kicked around the corner. We used to go to school, and we'd always, at lunchtime, there'd always be tag or tackle or bull rush or whatever it was in those days. But we'd always, be Brian Williams, because Brian Williams had a great sidestep. But after that tour, I wanted to pass like Gareth Edwards, that big dive pass. We'd all be practicing that, and he was my hero, and I know Sir Gareth very well, and he laughs at me when I say to him, Gareth, you are my childhood hero. And when I do things with Gareth, I still get a real buzz in my my arms, my hairs, or the back of my neck stand up, because I'm with the great Gareth Edwards. So that's it's very humbling.
Great. So obviously playing for the All Blacks, is obviously was a dream. Probably your father did. How did that feel to play for them so many times? And your win rate was fantastic, wasn't it? I mean, it was.
Yeah, I was lucky. I came into the All Blacks in a very strange time in New Zealand rugby. We'd had the Cavaliers tour in 1986 to South Africa, and 30 All Blacks got banned for two test matches, which gave a bunch of young kids an opportunity. And I was one of 12 players in 1986 in mid-June who got the opportunity to play for the All Blacks. I think 12 of us made our debut that day against the French, and it was the most special moment of my life, probably. I'm All Black number 871. I'm so proud of that, and we won that first test. We lost the second test. My next test was against Australia. We lost that, and then we got dropped for two tests, sat on the bench against Australia. And then I had that amazing consecutive run from sort of 86 through to 95 of playing every test match, or every minute of every test match the All Blacks played, which was just a phenomenal time. And, you know, I had an amazing 11, 12 years playing for the All Blacks. People said to me, you know, do you miss it? And I say, no. I said, I had 11 or 12 years playing for the All Blacks. It's meant everything to me. It was the greatest time of my life. But it is everything, you know, because during that time, you're totally dedicated. And you can see the guys, the Rich McCaws of the world, the Dan Carters of the world. Being an All Black is an opportunity to continue the legacy of the All Blacks. It's a huge responsibility. You're expected to win. And when you're expected to win, you have to turn up. You know, you have to be fit, you have to be focused. You know, before you do anything, is it good for the team? All these little sayings, which are just so key as a past All Black captain. You know, I expect the All Blacks to win now. I expect them to do everything they can to be as fit, as fast, as strong. And I watched the Super Rugby this morning, and I'm absolutely loving it because there's these young kids in the start of the cycle for the next World Cup that are going to be brilliant. And they want to be All Blacks, which I absolutely love.
Fantastic. So in terms of like players you've played against, obviously my journey was not, I was a less recognised player who moved from hooker to prop because I couldn't throw in. So I was the opposite to you. I went the other way. In terms of hooker, I love the front row. I know there's a lot of boys watching here and girls as well that play rugby, and they absolutely love that front row battle. In terms of hookers you've played against, you know, who would be the hardest hooker you probably had to scrummage against and play against in your career?
I was sort of, I don't know. We also always worked as 3 or 5 really. In terms of the scrum was really important to us. The set piece is so crucial in my day, and it still is today. You know, probably more so today. You know, with the lifting and the line outs and those sort of things. So you know, when I first started, there's a guy called Tommy Lawton from Australia, who you know, he was only a year older than me, but he was the first of the really big hookers. You know, Andy Dalton, who was a great All Black captain and hooker. You know, he tipped the scales at sort of 95 to 98 kilos. You know, where you know Tommy was 115 kilos. Right. And it's a massive change. Tommy was 6'2", and today that's the norm. Yeah. Where my day, you know, I was 104 kilos, 17 stone, and you know, I was strong. I was a builder by trade, so we never did any gym work. So you know, I was shoveling metal, lifting planks, you know, pushing wheelbarrows. So I was just naturally really strong. And we sort of worked on the French theory in terms of the way they used to scrummage, because John Drake, the tight head prop at the varsity club, he had been playing in France, so he brought back these new techniques that we used, and no one else was sort of doing that at that stage. So the Auckland team with Steve McDowell, myself, Drakey, and Peter Fatty, a loafer, we got a real ascendancy on everyone else really in terms of the way we were scrummaging, and luckily we all played in the All Blacks. You know, Gary Wetton, Murray Pearce, you know, Alan Wetton, Buck Shelford, we all just went on and had a hugely successful time post the World Cup in '87.
Okay, great. And no, that's fantastic. In terms of the Lions, then did you play against the Lions, Sean? And what was
I did in 1993.
Yeah, how was that for you then, and what was the outcome of that one?
I still, you know, having that history, Gareth, of that 1971 tour, I followed the Lions pretty closely. You know, 77 to New Zealand, 83 to New Zealand, Ollie Campbell and those sort of players. And to get the opportunity in 93 to play against the Lions, I still say it's the greatest jersey I have in my collection. And long may it continue. They're a brilliant brand. They epitomise everything that's good about rugby. And to play against them in '93, and my great mate Gavin Hastings was the captain of the Lions, and '93. He had played with us at the University Club in Auckland after the World Cup in '87. So we knew each other closely. We were lucky to win the first test with a last-minute penalty, which Foxy kicked over to win that game. We went to Wellington probably thinking we were better than what we were, and we got completely turned over. I played the worst game of my career in that game. The game I remember more than any other game was that game in '93 when we lost. And luckily, I got an opportunity a week later to take the team to Eden Park, and being 10-0 down after 10 minutes, I thought, right, this is the end of my All Black career. And luckily, we dug in and had a good win. But they're an amazing brand. I was in New Zealand in 2017, which I with the family went down, and we drove around New Zealand following the games. And I think it was the best tour I've ever been on. And I'd love to go to South Africa next year because it will be a brilliant tour again. But that just says so much about the brand, and it's something we need to hold on to. And with this world calendar at the moment that World Rugby is looking at, we need to make sure that a brand like the Lions is included and looked after going forward.
Oh, I mean, it's a fun, and I'm looking forward to that next year as well. It's great for rugby and something we look forward to. Obviously, all the different countries coming together. You won the World Cup in '87. It was the first World Cup, wasn't it? Is it right that you weren't the original starting hooker and you managed to work your way through and then actually get selected? Am I wrong there?
No, you're right. I'm a huge believer you need to take your opportunities.
Yeah.
and with I didn't even my first test. I was reserve in 1986 for my first test, and Bruce Samara, the great Maori All Black and All Black, unfortunately got injured at training on the Thursday, which gave me a chance. And in '87, it was the same scenario, but poor old Andy Dalton came back. He was the captain of the '87 team, and ironically, we assembled, I think, on the Wednesday before the first test against Italy at Eden Park. On the Wednesday, that was the first time we assembled, and our coach Brian Lahore, he got snowed in his farm in the Wairarapa, so couldn't make it to the Poenamo in Auckland where we were training. So Andy took the training, and we had a fitness sort of test, which was 3 days before our first match. I thought it was a little bit strange, and Andy was fit as anything, and he was out doing these sprints, and he pulled a hamstring, and unfortunately for Andy, that was the end of his campaign, really. And we didn't carry another hook. It was just basically me. And Steve McDowell, our loose-head prop, was going to cover if we needed to. And Andy wasn't fit until the semi-finals. And we'd done pretty well, so they just stuck with the team that had done so well throughout the tournament.
Oh, great. So I can also see in the background, I know he's there. In fairness, I'll tell the viewers, Joe Marler has tried to join us 4 times, right? So it may be that we do a phone interview because they've just sent me his number with Joe, but we will have Joe as well. So
great.
Keep the viewers.
He's a good boy.
Yeah, so Joe may come on. In fairness to Joe, I'm not going to sit here and criticise the guy. He has tried. I've seen him come on 4 times and on his number. So we may do that one separately after we finish with Sean. So, Sean, in terms of, a lot of Welsh people love the late Jonah Lomu.
Yes.
He came to Cardiff Blues and operated for them, and sold a lot of additional jerseys and a lot of seats. But did you play with Jonah Lomu then? And how special?
Yeah, I did. I was very fortunate, and he was a beautiful man, and he's sadly missed. I still say it today. He's the only global superstar rugby will ever have, and what he did in the space of 5 games in 1995.
Yeah,
it turned him into this household name almost around the world, which I don't think will ever happen again. 1993, we were playing the Australians in Otago at Dunedin at Carisbrook, and in those days the schoolboys would play before us. So New Zealand schoolboys were playing Australian schoolboys in the curtain raiser. We turned up sort of an hour and a half before kick-off our game, and we stood and watched the schoolboys. And in the space of 20 minutes, the number 8 for the New Zealand schoolboys scored 4 tries. And I said to one of the officials, I said, who's that number 8? And they said, oh, it's a guy called Jonah Lomu. And in the space of 8 months, he was playing on the wing for the All Blacks, and he was the youngest All Black ever, and played against the French. And unfortunately, they undid him a bit. He got exposed. He was dropped. We then had a training camp, and in January '95, and he wasn't fit enough. We didn't know he had a kidney disorder. Well, the coach and the players didn't know. I'm sure the doctor probably did. And he couldn't load fitness. So we were the fittest and fastest team in the world. We said, going to South Africa, we need to be fit and fast. We're going to have the quickest forward pack. We're going to recycle ball, and we're going to get out to our nippy wingers, which was Jeff Wilson and Eric Rush, and score tries. So with that, Jonah was sent off to the play sevens to get fit, and wasn't picked on the All Blacks to go to South Africa. Eric Rush got a hamstring injury. Jonah came in, and the rest was history. So he was the most humble man I've ever met. He was a person that didn't like the limelight. He was shy. He expressed himself on the field. He appreciated where he came from. He got an opportunity through rugby, and just unfortunately, he's not here to now continue that legacy of Jonah Lomu.
Yeah, so I know. I mean, he was a fantastic. I remember that '95, and I remember obviously I think the Underwood brothers and Mike Catt remember that game. Yeah. It was phenomenal, wasn't it?
Well, just no one had seen that sort of space, really, the space we were creating, Gareth, and to have somebody at 6'6" or 5.5 and 19.5 stone could run 100 meters in 10.5 seconds. No one had ever seen that, and there wasn't defensive systems set up to stop that, and I think it'd be different today. I think the defensive systems today are a lot better than what they were. Well, there is defensive systems, which, as a hooker, we didn't really sort of think too much about defence. It was just a matter of throwing the ball and standing on the wing, and I'd score an occasional try.
Yeah, fantastic. So before I try and get hold of Joe Marler, I really appreciate you obviously giving up your time. Who would you say in terms of, there's a couple of questions that come from about touring. So they say, what was the best country that you've ever been on tour? And is there any funny stories, or we're not allowed to, do they stay on tour, those stories?
I don't sort of really have many funny stories, actually. So people keep asking me, what's the funny story? I think probably when I look back and with this reset, I'm hoping that we'll have tours again. I'm hoping that the All Blacks will come on tour up here once every 4 years, potentially. But probably the greatest tour I went on was in '89 when we toured Ireland and Wales, and there's a video that's out there. I think The Good, the Bad, and the Rugby. You've got Zinzan Brooke on next week. He was sort of along with John Kerwin, was the narrator of The Good, the Bad, the Rugby. It was about that tour in '89. And we had such a special time going to all the clubs. I remember that game against Neath in '89. Oh my God, it was so intense. And then we played. Who did we play? Pontypool. I think when it was. And would Graham Price have played for Pontypool?
Yeah, the Pontypool front row, the famous front row in Pontypool.
Would Graham Price have played for them?
Yeah, Charlie Ford, Graham Price, and Bobby.
But Graham Price played in 1989 against us. He was one of my childhood heroes, and then to play against him and to stand in the showers after him with the great Graham Price was like, wow, this is so cool. But we play the game, and it was hard as nails. We're then going to have a dinner with the club team, the All Blacks. I'd sit opposite my number, Buck would sit opposite his number, and then the next morning we'd train at the local club, and we'd run off the beers the night before. We'd play a few games, but then we'd have a barbecue with the locals at the local club. And then, Buck and Steve McDowell would get their guitar out, and we'd sing all our lovely songs, and the locals would all join in. And then at 2:00, we'd pile onto the team bus, and we'd head off to the next valley, And it was the same when we went to Ireland. We toured, both sides of Ireland. and it's just such a special thing. And I just hope with this reset of rugby at the moment that we can bring that sort of rugby culture back into world rugby if we can get the windows right.
Yeah, because it's interesting. We had Phil Davies on, who coached Namibia.
Yes, I know Phil well. Yeah,
against the All Blacks. That's the one thing he said for those Namibian players was they had a can of lager with the All Blacks after the game, and he said it felt like, it should do. Obviously, I know they're professional athletes, but that for them it was playing their heroes. So he obviously said that, like you just said, it's the old-fashioned cultures that have made.
That's what the All Blacks are the most professional rugby team in the world, but we're still old school.
Yeah,
we still like those old school things that happen, and that's one of the things that we really try to hold on to in the All Blacks, because it's special. No one else has it in terms of our sport. You can turn up, and I remember when we first came over to the UK, or Zinzan will talk about it. They went down to the Windsor Rugby Club, and with that, all his mate, they just became friends. They work in the local pub, or just because of rugby. Everyone is very close and sincere and honest.
Yeah, and you look at things like this. I wouldn't have seen a lot of professional football players coming on. Ex-players doing what the guests have done for rugby. He's been giving back has been phenomenal. So I do appreciate that a lot. To be honest with you. Before I try and get hold of Joe Marler, I'd just like to ask in terms of your career. You mentioned your father, your brother, and obviously that's obviously his birthday today. So as a club, I do share our wishes to him and Nelson Mandela, because I know a lot of you top players have had a lot of interaction with him. And I speak to Colin Chavez, who met him on the tour and different things. So, in terms of your career, who would you say was the biggest influence in the Sean Fitzpatrick career? Which was an amazing career, to be honest with you, Sean, isn't it? As we know.
Yeah, I think obviously mum and dad, as when I was growing up, and the support they gave me. I suppose my employees in the early days when we, they had to put up with us touring, a lot. But I think, my wife and my children have been hugely supportive. I couldn't have done it without them. I was lucky. My wife's a lawyer, so she worked and I played rugby basically in the early days. And the children had to sacrifice a lot. Dad missed the first day of school. Dad missed the birth. Those sort of things. They were just a given. And unless you have that support network around you, the right advisors, and it's so crucial, especially today in the professional game, that the young men have the right support networks around them. So it's you've got to be onto it. And if you haven't got that, you need people around you who can give you that advice, because it's a short career. It's an amazing career, but you've got to remember that there is life after rugby. People remember what you're like as a professional sportsman. So you've got to we talk a lot about it on the All Blacks. There's a lot of givens, honesty, integrity, respect, humility. That's just a given. Like I'm sure you're the same, Gareth. You just expect people to be like that, and that's what we talk about in the All Blacks all the time. It's just a given. We don't need to talk about it. You need good people make great teams, and it's the same in life. And I think as you get a bit older, Gareth, you have less and less friends because you want to be surrounded by good people.
Yeah, I mean, this is fantastic advice, and I'm looking at the comments, from all sorts of rugby clubs, people in Spain, France, Australia, and they're saying, what an absolute gentleman of a guy, and obviously really appreciate Sean on behalf of Astragon Ice Rugby Club. It's been amazing to speak to you personally. You're in my cupboard as a statue grog, and then at the start of lockdown, I never said that I'd be talking to one of my heroes of rugby. So I'd just like to thank you personally.
It's absolute pleasure.
Yeah, and on behalf of the rugby club, I would like to say, and all the people that have watched, that aren't just our rugby club, the local community rugby clubs, or everybody that's watched, I'd just like to say, thank you personally. And obviously, I know you're going to have your chicken now, so go and enjoy your chicken.
It's got a bit of time. I see you've got my email up there.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to send you one of my books anyway, Gareth.
Right.
But the first person who can email me without using out using the internet, can email me and tell me what All Black number I was.
Right. So there's a question there for our viewers. The first person to email Sean Fitzpatrick with his All Black number will.
And I mentioned that earlier in the conversation.
Yeah.
It's not number 2. It's my actual All Black number.
All Black number. So it's on Sean has given away a book. Is it a book, Sean? So I can arrange.
And send me your address, and I will send you a book.
Yeah. So if you send me a book down, I will get that given out to the winner, because obviously we can go from there. Okay. And I just appreciate what a lovely gesture that you've done. I now need to see if Joe Marler, in fairness to the guy, has tried to log on a lot of times. I may be doing his interview via phone, so we'll be going old-fashioned via phone if he answers.
He'll keep you busy. He'll keep you on your toes.
I'm not bothered about that. I'm waiting for him to come. I've been waiting for this one for a while.
He's brilliant. He's a great Harlequins man.
Yeah, as long as you are. But as I said, on behalf of the club, Sean, and rugby in general in Wales, I'd just like to thank you literally for all you've done for us this evening, and that lovely gesture of a book. So enjoy the rest of your night, Sean, and thank you very much.
I'm just looking. The boys in Wales would like that. I'm just looking in the picture behind me here.
Yeah, show us your picture, Sean. What's this one?
This is my sheep.
Yeah, number 2 sheep. I wouldn't put that on the screen, Sean. This could cause a lot of excitement around the area. But in this day and age, you've got to be so politically correct, so I probably won't go down the sheep jokes.
Okay.
That's short sheep, is it, Sean? Right. Well, thank you very much, Sean. And, I'll try and get on with Mr. Joe Marler. So really appreciate that, Sean. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Right, what a night. We've had a fantastic Nigel Davies, first of all, that gave us a lot of his time. And then, Sean Fitzpatrick was given away one of his books. I'm going to try to go old school now with Joe Marler. If this doesn't work, then in fairness to the guy, he has tried to log on. And I will try and give Joe Marler a call, which you can see I'm doing. So I will see if Joe Marler is available. And if not, then we'll just crack on the quick. But I am trying to ring Joe at the moment. And we may have to go old school via the telephone. But in fairness, I said he has tried to log on 2 times. But I'm not, I haven't got any luck yet. So we'll go the other way and go old school landline. See whether we can get it. If not, we will crack on. I don't know if you can't hear me there, but I think there's a problem with the sound is there. Or just let me know if you can hear me. I've gone a bit fuzzy, I believe. Let me just see what's wrong. That should be better. If you can't hear me, I'll plug the headphones back in, and hopefully you can hear me back again. Let me just try and see whether I can get hold of Joe Marler. If not, we'll be going back to the straight onto the quiz. So I will try this now. Let me just try, and this could be a bit of fun if this comes in, a phone call interview with Joe Marler. So let me just try and see. I am ringing, as you see. This is a bit fun. Maybe ring me back. Let me see if he's there. And if not, we'll just crack on with the quiz. And if he does ring me back, then we'll go live with Joe Marler. Hello. He's not there yet. I'll go the other way again. I've got 3 options here. Let me just try the other way. Sorry about this to our viewers. This is all fun of live, interviews. I'm trying the old-fashioned Joe Marler, and if not, then I will crack on with the quiz, and I may have to bring him on via the. So he hasn't answered, but in fairness to him, I'm not going to criticise the guy. He's tried hard to come on. So we'll crack on with the quiz, and then we will see if Joe Marler does ring me. And if he does, we'll have a bit of fun with Joe Marler. Because obviously, in fairness to Adam Jones, he's been fantastic in setting this up. But it is just one of those things where technology doesn't always work. But we got Sean Fitzpatrick, and in fairness to Nigel Davies, he extends. So the quiz this week is sponsored by Astragon Lice Community Centre. and they have been fantastic in giving away. It's a free children's party, including Bouncy Castle. If you put your answers in the comments box, it'll be randomly picked. And what I will do for you is I will try Joe Marler before we wrap up. The first question, we're going to go through this quickly this year. What year did the Titanic sink? What year did the Titanic sink? Sponsored by Ashton Community Centre, doing a fantastic job up in Penrose. What year did the Titanic sink? Put your answers in the box on the side of this forecast, and we will see who is going to be our lucky winner. So, what year did the Titanic sink? You are playing for a free party in Ashton Life in the Unity Store, but you've also got the chance of whoever emailed Sean first, you're going to win a book as well. So, what a lovely thing of Sean Fitzpatrick to do, give away a book to one of our fantastic viewers, and said that we sent you personally and 12 times. So, what year did the Titanic sink? Question number 2. What is the title of the first ever carry-on film? What is the title of the first carry-on film? So what is the title of the first carry-on film? I'd just like to say a personal massive thanks to everyone within Ashton Rugby Club, the committee and volunteers and the staff that got the club up and running yesterday in terms of getting the club back up. And thanks to everybody within any rugby club that's managed to get the clubs back open. It's a big thing for the clubs. We need all the support we can get. So what was the first ever carry-on camping film? As I said, I will try Joe Marler again. It's not his fault. He did try and log on a few times. Next week's guests are Zinzan Brook, Xavier Rush, the All Black number 8 as well, and then a personal favourite of mine, that man that scored the try against England, slid down in Cardiff Arms Park, Mr. Ian Evans. So it's a party in Astro Gun Life Community Centre. And as I said, they've done great things up in Penrose. What is the title of the first ever carry-on film? Question number 3. What is the name of the biggest technology company in South Korea? What is the name of the biggest technology company in South Korea? So they've got a lot of mobile phones. What is the name of the biggest technology company in South Korea? Don't worry if you're not the quickest answer. It will be done on obviously a random, so everyone gets a chance. You've got a chance to win a party for children up in Ashton Community Centre, and I'd like to thank Daniel Davies and the committee up there for that. And also the chance, if you got your email in, I wonder how many emails that you will have got sent into Sean Fitzpatrick. You've all got his email address now, so don't go stalking him. But as I said, you've got a direct line. I'll give you a direct line to obviously Sean Fitzpatrick, which is absolutely, as a small little club, to get guests like this has been absolutely fantastic. Which singer fronted the 1970s pop group Shawadawadi? Which singer fronted the 1970s pop group Shawadawadi? So that's question number 4. We are rattling through them, as I said, this week. And I will, before I go this week, try Joe Marler. A bit of sad news. Next week will be the last in the series. We are going to have another series. We're going to be having Christmas specials of this. But next week, so I'd like to get the biggest audience we can. Let's share this all over social media and really spread the love of not just Ashton Nice Rugby Club, but just rugby in general. So, as I said, what is the singer fronted in 1970s pop group Shawadawadi? As I said, next week will be the last one. 3 guests, 2 All Blacks, and 1 Welsh international and British Lion, Ian Evans. So, question number 5: which famous TV chef started cooking at the age of 8 in a pub in Essex called the Cricketers? Which famous TV chef, he's very famous, had his own chain of restaurants, started cooking at the age of 8 in a pub in Essex called the Cricketers? So, which now famous TV chef started cooking at the age of 8? We got a bit of excitement at the end. I will try Joe Marler again on his phone because he has tried to log on a few times and he hasn't managed to. So it's just one of those things. But obviously we've got a lot more with Sean Edwards. I keep calling him Sean Fitzpatrick. Question number 6: which darts player won the 2012 BDO World Championships at Lakeside on the 15th of January? Which Dutch darts player won the 2012 BDO World Championships at Lakeside Country Club? As I said, tonight is sponsored. I'm very grateful to the guys at Ustrad Community Centre. As I said, up in the youth club, they're in Penrose, where the Ustrad football, there's a lot of great work going on there with girls and obviously boys football. Loads of children playing football up there, and they've done a fantastic job. There's a skate park. They're linked to the school. So just to say thank you to those guys. Which Dutch darts player won the 2012 BDO Championship at Lakeside in Frimley Green? So there's a few different answers come in. As I said, it's the BDO. So remember, it's the BDO World Championships. It's good to see Daniel Banwin on board. Well done, Daniel. Hope you're looking ready for the new season with Cumgrach. Fantastic job there last season. Probably would have got all the way to the Millennium if the season hasn't. So welcome to Daniel Banwin. Good to see him back on. Question number 7. Which metal was discovered by Hans Christian Osten in 1825? Which metal was discovered by Hans Christian Osten in 1825? So, which metal was discovered by Hans Christian Osten in 1825? It's linked to a can. I will give you a clue. A can. We know what a can's made of. I am giving out clues because we're coming to the end of the quiz. Which metal was discovered by Hans Christian Osten in 1825? Which metal was discovered by Hans Christian? As I said, you're playing for a free party in Astra Gunlice Community Centre that you can use once this lockdown is over. Question number 8: what is the capital of Portugal? So I know we are rushing through, but we've had a great hour and a half so far. It may extend if someone answers the phone, but if not, we'll just look forward to next week where we will have 3 guests. As I said, 2 All Blacks in Zinzan Brook, Xavier Rush, and the Ian Evans as well. Fantastic, British Lion, Welsh captain, try scorer, great Knecky player. So Ian Evans as well. So what is the capital of Portugal? So what is the capital of Portugal? Question number 9. How many breaths does the human body take daily? How many breaths does the human body take daily? So question number 9. How many breaths does the human body take daily? It's obviously thousands. Not far off the Liberty Stadium capacity. I'll give you a clue. So how many breaths does the human body take daily? So question number 9, how many breaths does the human body? The answer, Rory, is not a lot. There's a few answers coming up. Some of you are using Google. Some of you are copying answers. It's not about that. It's about a bit of fun. And as Matthew Soroka would say, it's about increasing your morale during these tough times that hopefully are coming to an end. So how many... sorry, I know it's hard, Maggie. I hope you're enjoying out in Spain. I'll do a nice, easy quiz next week to keep it simple, but I've got to keep people on their toes. Last question. Who was the Prime Minister of Great Britain from 1841 to 1846? There was a scrum half that played for Wales with the same surname as this guy. So I'll give you a clue. Who was the Prime Minister of Great Britain from 1841 to 1846? There was a scrum half that played for Wales with the same surname as this Prime Minister. And if you do something to an orange, it's exactly the same. So who was the Prime Minister of Great Britain from 1841 to 1846? I'll let you get your answers in, and I will have a look at my phone to see if I've got any missed calls. As I said, who was the Prime Minister in 1841 to 1846. And this is for a party in Astragon Lies Community Centre. So that's the end of the quiz. I'll be taking the end answers through, but I'll start at the beginning. The Titanic sunk in 1912. The winner there of that quick one was R.G. Davies. The first title of Carry On was Carry On Sergeant. That was Mallory Rees. What is the name of the biggest technology company in South Korea? Samsung. That is Tom Hardy doing some fantastic things with the boys up in Cum and the ladies up in Cum. They got a new clubhouse, which I'm looking forward to going to. And as I said, that's Tom Hardy. Keep up the great work, Tom, you and the guys up in Cum and the girls. Fantastic to see things happening in all the local clubs. What famous singer was Shuadi? That was David Bartram. That was Rory Menal. Is it Rory? Which famous chef? It was in the Age 8 in his parents' pub. That was Jamie Oliver. I've got Rory Mullen again. So, which darts player won the 2012 BDO? It was actually Christian Gist. So it wasn't Barney. I think there that I've got Mallory Rees. So there's 2 there for Mallory, 2 there for Rory. The metal that was discovered by Hans Christian Ossen is aluminium. That goes out to Spain, to somebody called Maggie Small. What is the capital of Portugal? That is Lisbon. I've got Pam Nation. How many breaths does the human body take daily? 20,000. I've got somebody called Chris Holloway for that one. And the final answer is, what was the Prime Minister of Great Britain called in 1841 to 1846? That is Ian Hardy. So for the first time ever, I've got 2 people. Rory, Rory didn't get that one right. Rory got the question after. So Rory is on 2, and I've got Mallory Rees. So what I will be doing is I'm going to have a tie-break question on the quickest answer. So if Rory and Mallory can get ready to answer the question the quickest, it will be for a party up in the Astra Community Centre. And then I will try Joe Marler straight after this to see if I can get any luck. If not, we'll move on to next week's special guests and focus on that. So the question will be, what year was Astragon Lice Rugby Club founded? What year for Rory and Mallory? There's both of you a chance to win. What year was Astragon Lice Club founded? I may have got Rory, but Rory's down for 2. It may be not the singing question, but Rory, you did get 2 correct, so you're in the tie break. What year was Astragon Lice founded as a rugby club? It's a tie break question. What year was Astragon Lice Rugby Club founded? Tie break for 2 people. I'm waiting for the first answer to come in to get my winner. How exciting. And I will try Mr. Joe Marler. If I don't get any luck, then that will obviously wrap up a fantastic evening with 2 great guests in Nigel Davies and the legend Sean Fitzpatrick. So what year did Astragon Lice? I have to say the winner is Mallory Rees. So I will be in touch with Mallory. Rory came in at 1875. The answer was 1890. I also appreciate Rory's honesty. Rory got the question before right, so he still had 2 answers right. And I said, honest guy. So thank you, Rory, and thanks for tuning in. And well done to Mallory. We'll have that last chance phone call of with Joe Marler. If we don't get any luck, then obviously I will go and have my grub if I don't lock my mobile phone out. So I will give Joe Marler one last ring and see where we are. Hopefully you'll pick up Mr. Marler. This is a bit of fun, isn't it? If not, we'll move on to next week's. As I said, it's been a fantastic evening, and in fairness to Joe, he has tried to, come in and make. So obviously, there's no luck ringing there. I'll try one more way, and Malaria's given her prize back. So there'll be a kid's. She's given the lovely gesture. She's given back the prize to the club. So what we will look at doing, if we can speak to the guys up at Ustrad Community Centre, we may have an option to take some of the rugby team up there to have a fantastic bouncy castle party. So, Malari, thank you very much. Thank you also to Rory for your honesty. We'll try one more way of ringing, and then we'll be knocking it on the head for tonight. So, thank you very much. Right, that's us done. And I've got Adam Jones texting me as well to see if it's all good. What we may do is, if we may end up with an extra guest next week, so we'll have 4 as it's our last show in the series. I'd just like to say thank you very much to all of you for supporting this evening, supporting the club. We've got a special guest in the corner there. It isn't Joe Marler. It's one of our under 10s or under 11s players. So as I said, have a great week. We'll see you next week for the last in this series. And thank you for all the support on behalf of the whole of Ustrad Rugby Club. I'd like to say thank you for tuning in, and thank you for all the support. And get out there and support your local rugby clubs if you can. They'll need you more than ever before. So from me, good night, and all the best to every single one of you. Stay safe.